In the shadowed dawn of May 29, 1453, the ancient walls of Constantinople trembled under the relentless thunder of Ottoman cannons, their blasts echoing like the final gasps of a dying giant. Smoke choked the air, mingling with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the metallic temps of spilled blood, as defenders atop the ramparts clutched their swords, their faces etched with exhaustion and defiance. 4 weeks, the city had endured a siege that seemed forged in the fires of apocalypse, its inhabitants whispering prayers in the dim glow of Hagia Sophia's lamps, unaware that this night would seal the fate of an empire that had withstood the tempests of time for over a millennium. The Byzantine Empire, heir to Rome's glory, stood on the precipice, its once unassailable heart now vulnerable to the surging tide of conquerors. As the first rays of sun pierced the haze, breaches appeared in the stone fortifications, and waves of Ottoman soldiers poured through like a flood unleashed, their war cries drowning out the desperate shouts of Byzantine warriors. In that chaotic symphony of clashing steel and crumbling masonry, the end began not with a whimper, but with the roar of an era's collapse. Yet, to understand this cataclysm, one must journey back through the corridors of history, where the seeds of downfall were sown long before the cannon spoke. The Byzantine Empire emerged from the ashes of Rome's division, when Emperor Constantine refounded Byzantium as Constantinople in 330 AD, transforming it into a beacon of Christian power and Roman legacy. While the Western Roman Empire succumbed to barbarian invasions and the East endured, its emperors ruling from a city fortified by the impregnable Theodosian walls, surrounded by the shimmering waters of the Bosphorus and the Golden Horn. Under Justinian I in the 6th century, the empire reached its zenith, reconquering lost territories in North Africa, Italy, and Spain, while codifying Roman law in the Corpus Juris Civilis, a foundation that would influence legal systems for centuries. The air in Constantinople buzzed with the clamor of merchants from distant lands, haggling over silks, spices, and ivory in the bustling forums, where the scent of incense from grand basilicas mingled with the salty breeze from the sea. Grand processions wound through streets lined with marble columns and mosaics depicting saints and their golden hues, reflecting the sun's glory. Yet even in these halcyon days, shadows loomed. Devastating plagues like the one in 541 that emptied villages and cities, leaving echoes of mourning in silent homes, and ceaseless wars with Persians that drained treasuries and spilled rivers of blood across arid frontiers. The empire's resilience was forged in such trials, but each victory carried the whisper of future fragility. In the thriving heart of the 11th century, under Basil II, known as the Bull, daily life in the Byzantine realms pulsed with a rhythm of ordered prosperity and vigilant faith. Peasants tilled fertile Anatolian fields under the watchful eyes of themed soldiers, farmer warriors, who defended the land they worked, their plows turning soil rich with the promise of wheat and olives. In Constantinople, artisans hammered gold into intricate jewelry in dimly lit workshops, the rhythmic clangs blending with the chants of monks from monasteries perched on hills. Overlooking the sea, markets overflowed with goods from the Silk Road, the exotic aroma of cinnamon and pepper wafting through crowds of veiled women and bearded traders, while children played in the shadows of aqueducts that carried fresh water from distant springs. Imperial ceremonies unfolded in the Hippodrome, where the roar of chariot races thrilled thousands, and the emperor's purple robes symbolized unyielding authority. Yet, beneath this veneer of stability, the air carried subtle tensions. The murmur of court intrigues in the great palaces echoing halls, where Iona and nobles plotted in hushed tones, and the distant rumble of nomadic horsemen testing borders. Families gathered around hearths at dusk, sharing stories of heroic emperors, oblivious to the slow erosion that would one day unravel their world. Early signs of trouble flickered like distant lightning on the horizon, invisible to most but ominous to the discerning. In the mid-11th century, the theme system, once the backbone of Byzantine defense, began to fray as powerful landowners amassed vast estates, evading taxes and weakening the central treasury. The scent of decay crept into rural villages, where abandoned farms grew wild with thorns, and soldiers, no longer tied to the land, drifted into mercenary bands. Religious rifts deepened with the Great Schism of 1054, when legates from Rome and patriarchs in Constantinople excommunicated each other in a storm of mutual accusations, the air thick with the incense of divided altars and the chill of severed unity. Whispers of heresy echoed through monasteries, fostering distrust that would later alienate allies. Meanwhile, economic strains mounted as Venetian merchants secured trade their galleys slicing through Byzantine waters, siphoning wealth that once filled imperial coffers. In the palaces, emperors like Constantine IX indulged in lavish banquets, the clink of golden goblets masking the growing deficit. While borders faced probing raids from Pechenegs and Normans, their hoofbeats a faint warning drumroll. No one yet grasped the gathering storm, but the empire's foundations were quietly shifting. As the 11th century waned, tension coiled tighter, like a bowstring drawn to its limit. The catastrophic Battle of Manzikert in 1071 shattered illusions of invincibility. Imperid Romanus Intravenosu, Diogenes, captured amid the dust-choked plains of eastern Anatolia, his armies scattered by Seljuk arrows whistling through the scorching air. The defeat opened the floodgates to Turkish nomads, who swept into the heartland, their campfires dotting hills once patrolled by Byzantine garrisons. Civil wars erupted in the aftermath, a frenzy of revolts where pretenders clashed in blood-soaked fields, the cries of the wounded mingling with the ravens' calls over abandoned villages. 8 uprisings in a decade drained resources, forcing emperors to hire Turkish mercenaries, whose loyalties shifted like desert sands. In Constantinople, the populace huddled in fear as rumors of invasions spread through narrow streets. The distant smoke from razed towns, economic concessions to Venice and Genoa deepened, their merchants dominating ports where Byzantine ships once ruled. The jingle of foreign coins echoing the empire's waning control. Yet, under Alexios I Komnenos, a fragile restoration began. His pleas for Western aid summoning the First Crusade, knights thundering across lands in a clash of faiths, but this alliance carried seeds of betrayal. Instability festered like an untreated wound, spreading through the empire's veins in the 12th century. The Comnian Emperis Alexios, John and Manuel waged ceaseless campaigns, their armies marching through rain-lashed mountains and sun-baked valleys, the clash of swords against Seljuk shields resounding across Anatolia. Yet, each victory was Pyrrhic, resources depleted by the need to quell internal rebellions, where noble families vied for the throne in shadowy palace coups, the air heavy with the scent of poison and intrigue. The Battle of Myriokellen in 1176 marked another blow. Manuel I's forces ambushed in narrow pass, rocks tumbling down slopes amid panicked shouts, halting reconquest dreams. Religious persecution of Armenians in the east alienated border populations, who fled or defected, leaving frontiers exposed to the windswept steppes where nomadic raiders lurked. In the cities, inflation gnawed at daily life, bakers rationing bread amid grumbling crowds, while famines followed raids. The silence of empty granaries, a haunting reminder of vulnerability. The empire balanced on a knife's edge, its leaders navigating alliances with Crusader states, but underlying fractures widened, unnoticed by those basking in temporary peace. Key decisions in the late 12th century accelerated the downward spiral, choices born of desperation that invited disaster. Under the Angelos dynasty, Emperor Isaac II's overthrow of I unleashed a reign of terror and incompetence, his court rife with corruption where officials embezzled funds meant for defenses, the clink of stolen gold echoing in opulent halls, while walls crumbled, seeking aid against Bulgarian uprisings. Isaac's brother, Alexios III, alienated Western powers, but it was Alexios IV's fateful pact with the Fourth Crusade that sealed doom. Promising riches to Venetian Doge Enrico Dandolo and Crusader leaders, he diverted their holy war to Constantinople, the fleet's sails darkening the horizon like storm clouds. The air in the city grew thick with foreboding as foreign armies encamped outside, negotiations fracturing amid accusations of betrayal. Internal pressures mounted. Tax hikes squeezed the populace, sparks of riots igniting in marketplaces where the smell of burning stalls mixed with cries for justice. Emperors ignored warnings from advisors, prioritizing short-term survival over long-term reform, hiring more mercenaries whose presence sowed discord. By the time the Crusaders' intentions clarified, retreat was impossible, the die was cast. The system began to fracture irreparably with the sack of Constantinople in 1204, a cataclysm that tore the empire asunder. Venetian ships breached the Golden Horn's chain, their rams splintering wooden barriers amid the splash of oars and shouts of attackers. Flames leaped from building to building, the crackle of burning timber devouring libraries and palaces, while Latin knights rampaged through streets slick with blood, the screams of the violated piercing the night. Thousands perished in the carnage, survivors fleeing in terror as sacred relics were looted from Hagia Sophia, its mosaics shattered under greedy hands. The empire splintered into rival states. The Latin Empire in Constantinople, Greek successor realms in Nicaea, Trebizond, and Epirus, their borders contested in endless skirmishes, where the dust of marching armies choked the air. This dismemberment stripped Byzantium of its core economic heartlands, lost to foreign overlords. Trade routes severed like arteries. The once mighty city lay in ruins, its forums silent save for the wind whistling through debris, a ghost of its former splendor. From this wound, recovery seemed possible, but the scars ran deep, weakening the body politic for generations. In the fragmented aftermath, daily existence turned to survival amid the ruins of grandeur. In Nicaea, exiled emperors rallied remnants, their courts echoing with plans for while peasants in Anatolia huddled in fortified villages. The night air, alive with the howls of wolves and the distant gallop of Turkish raiders. Markets dwindled, bartering replacing coinage as inflation rendered money worthless. The scent of stale bread a staple in humble homes. Religious fervor intensified. Monks in remote monasteries chanting litanies against heretics and invaders, their voices a fragile bulwark against despair. The reconquest of Constantinople in 1261 by Michael VIII. Greek forces entered the gates, but the city was a shadow depopulated its harbors, clogged with silt, the air heavy with the musty odor of neglect. Yet, this restoration masked ongoing decay. The church union with Rome in 1274, imposed to secure Western aid, sparked riots in streets where incense clashed with the smoke of torched effigies. Dividing the faithful, families whispered of better times, but the invisible threads of unity were unraveling faster than anyone could mend. Warning signs multiplied in the 13th and 14th centuries, subtle at first but increasingly dire. The Paranoia system, granting lands for military service, corrupted into hereditary fiefs, powerful magnates evading taxes, leaving the treasury echoing empty like a forgotten vault. Plagues revisited, the Black Death in 1347, sweeping through crowded quarters. The air foul with the stench of death carts rumbling over cobblestones, bodies piled in mass graves. Economic dominance slipped further as Genoese colonies in Galata siphoned customs duties, their warehouses bulging with goods, while Byzantine ports lay idle, the lap of waves against empty docks. A mournful rhythm. Internal religious strife festered with the Arsenite schism, exiles, and persecutions, breeding resentment. Monasteries becoming hotbeds of opposition where the flicker of candlelight illuminated defiant scrolls. Borders contracted under Serbian advances. Stefan Dusan's empire, gobling Macedonia and Thessaly. His army's campfires, lighting nights that once belonged to Byzantium. No one heeded the omens fully, but the empire's pulse weakened, each beat echoing fainter in the halls of power. Tension escalated relentlessly as the Ottomans rose from Anatolian obscurity, their shadow lengthening over Byzantine lands. Under Osman I and Orhan Gazi, Turkish beyliks consolidated, their horsemen thundering across plains, raiding villages where the crack of whips drove captives into slavery. The air filled with lamentations and dust. Civil wars plagued the Paleologos dynasty. The 1321 to 1328 conflict between Andronikos II and three battles, raging in Thrace's fields, the ground soaked with blood as mercenaries switched sides for gold. The scent of betrayal hung heavy in imperial tents, alliances fracturing like brittle clay. Emperors sought Western aid, John V traveling to Rome in humiliation, converting to Catholicism amid jeers from his Orthodox subjects. The chill of foreign cathedrals, a stark contrast to Hagia Sophia's warmth. Ottoman galleys crossed the dark, seizing Gallipoli in 1354 amid earthquakes that shook the earth like divine wrath. establishing a European foothold. In Constantinople, watchfires burned brighter on walls, guards straining ears for the distant drum of approaching doom. But internal divisions blinded leaders to the encroaching peril. Critical mistakes compounded in the 14th century. Decisions that hastened the inevitable. John Sexto Cantacusenos, in the Civil War of 1341 to 1347, allied with Ottoman troops, inviting them into Europe as mercenaries, their boots trampling Thracian soil that would soon be theirs. The war devastated the countryside. Fields lay fallow, overgrown with weeds, the silence broken only by the wind sighing through ruined farmsteads. Famine stalked the land, hollow-eyed villagers scavenging for roots. The air rank with desperation. Economic concessions escalated. Genoa, controlling Black Sea trade, their profits draining like blood from a wound, while Byzantine revenues trickled to a halt. Attempts at church union faltered. The 1439 Council of Florence's agreements, rejected by the populace. Riots erupting in streets, where the clash of icons and crosses symbolized fractured faith. Emperors like Manuel II toured Europe begging for crusades, but promises evaporated like morning mist, leaving the empire isolated. Hiring Catalan mercenaries backfired, their raids turning inward, pillaging like wolves among sheep. By now, the heir is accumulated, each one a stone in the avalanche poised to bury the realm. The tipping point arrived as Ottoman expansion became unstoppable, the system crumbling under relentless pressure. By the late 14th century, Murad I and Bayezid conquered Byzantine strongholds. Adrianople fell in 1369, becoming the Ottoman capital, its minarets rising where churches once stood. The call to prayer drowning sieges tightened around remaining enclaves, the air thick with siege engines' creaks and the thud of boulders against walls. The Battle of Kosovo in 1389 weakened Serbian allies, their defeat echoing across Balkans like a death knell. In Anatolia, the last Byzantine towns surrendered, populations fleeing across seas in overcrowded boats, waves lapping at hulls heavy with refugees. Internal collapse accelerated. The 1373 to 1391 civil strife saw John V imprison his sons, palace dungeons echoing with chains, fostering more division. The Black Death returned, depopulating Thrace, ghostly villages standing empty under leaden skies. Emperors pawned crown jewels for aid that never came, the glitter of gold fading into pawnshops' gloom. The empire shrank to Constantinople in fragments, its failure manifest in every abandoned outpost. Human suffering etched the collapse's narrative in indelible pain, as social fabric tore apart. During Ottoman advances, villages burned, acrid smoke blooding the sun. Survivors stumbling through ash-coked paths with bundles of meager possessions, children wailing in hunger. Enslavement raids captured thousands, chains clanking in grim processions to distant markets. Families sundered forever amid tearful farewells. In besieged cities like Thessalonica, fallen in 1430, starvation gnawed at inhabitants, the gnawing silence of empty bellies, broken by feeble pleas. Religious persecution intensified. Orthodox clergy branded heretics for rejecting union. Exiles wandering cold mountains, their breaths frosting in prayer. Nobles fled to Italy, carrying ancient manuscripts, but peasants endured the brunt, taxes crushing like millstones. Revolts crushed under cavalry charges, blood-staining threshing floors. Constantinople swelled with refugees, streets clogged with the destitute, the air heavy with disease and despair. Women mourned lost husbands in shadowed churches, candles flickering like fading hopes, as society fragmented into isolated enclaves of fear. The long-term echoes of Byzantium's fall reshaped the world, ripples extending far beyond its borders. With Constantinople's conquest, the Ottoman Empire ascended, its sultans ruling from the renamed Istanbul. Minarets piercing skies where domes once dominated, forging a new Islamic powerhouse that dominated the Mediterranean and Balkans for centuries. The influx of Greek scholars to Italy, bearing Plato and Aristotle's texts, ignited the Renaissance, their voices in Florentine academies sparking intellectual fires that illuminated Europe from medieval darkness. Trade routes shifted, spurring European explorations across oceans, the scent of new spices from distant Indies replacing lost Byzantine monopolies. The end of the Roman continuum marked a rupture in history. The last vestiges of classical antiquity yielding to modernity's dawn. Religious landscapes transformed. Eastern Orthodoxy endured under Ottoman Millet, churches whispering liturgies in subdued tones, while Catholicism solidified in the West. Politically, the vacuum birthed new states. From Muscovy's claim as Third Rome to emerging Balkan nations, their foundations laid in the rubble of empire. Yet, the collapse was no sudden thunderbolt, but a protracted agony. A symphony of missteps and misfortunes that eroded grandeur over centuries. From Manzikert's dusty defeat to the cannon's roar at Constantinople's walls. Each event wove into a tapestry of decline. Threads of civil discord, foreign blades, and economic rot, pulling taut until the fabric ripped. The air in the fallen city hung heavy with the silence of ended eras. Birds wheeling over breached ramparts where emperors once strode. Survivors scattered like leaves in autumn winds, carrying fragments of a lost world icons. Memories languished to foreign shores. In this haunting twilight, one senses the inexorable cycle of empires, rising in splendor, faltering under their own weight, collapsing into history's embrace. The Byzantine saga whispers a timeless caution, its echoes fading but never fully silent, reminding that even the mightiest fortresses yield 2 times relentless siege. The remnants of Byzantium lingered in pockets like Trebizond, fallen in 1461, amid similar scenes of desperation. But the core was gone, its legacy a spectral presence in Orthodox rituals and architectural marvels. The human toll lingered in collective memory, generations scarred by loss. Tallies passed in firelit gatherings of heroic last stands and betrayals. Ottoman rule brought new orders, bazaars bustling with diverse voices, but the undercurrent of subjugation simmered. Europe's monarchs, jolted by the fall, mustered fleeting crusades, their banners fluttering in vain winds. The intellectual diaspora enriched the West, ancient wisdom fueling innovations in art and science, the brushstrokes of Da Vinci echoing Byzantine mosaics. Yet, in the quiet ruins, wildflowers pushed through cracked marble. Nature reclaiming what man had wrought, a poignant symbol of renewal amid decay. Reflecting on this epic unraveling, the air seems charged with the ghosts of what was a civilization that bridged antiquity and the Middle Ages. Its collapse, a pivot in human destiny. The streets of modern Istanbul still trace ancient contours, whispers of Byzantine hymns, blending with calls to prayer, a layered testament to endurance and change. In the end, the empire's fall teaches the fragility of power, how invisible fissures widen into chasms, swallowing legacies whole. As the sun sets over the Bosphorus, casting long shadows on waters that witnessed it all, one ponders the quiet inevitability. Empires, like stars, burn brightly before fading into the vast night of history.